This episode includes discussions of war, trauma, racism, death, and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. Hola, mi gente, and welcome back to Streetlight Confessions. We're here with part 2 of Doc's story and journey. Streetlight Confessions is a podcast for storytelling, conversation, and personal reflection. The views shared by the hosts and guests are their own and do not constitute medical, psychological, legal, or professional advice. Listener discretion is advised. I grew up in a time where men didn't talk. You kept it in, you handled it, or you broke. But now, I'm done with the silence. This is Streetlight Confessions, a podcast where men speak the truth about pain, about pressure, about mental health. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a man who lived some life. And I know we need this. Real conversations, no fluff, no fake masculinity. If you're tired of pretending everything is fine, follow the show. Let's build something honest together. I want to bring us back to that moment where you found your love for comic books, because that's what brought us together. And we've had stories about this, but please explain how you were introduced to our world of comic books and the nerdum that is us, because we are part of that nerdum.
1959. Do you remember that year? No. Okay.
It was about 21 years before I was born.
I had a severe speech impediment. I could not pronounce, without stuttering, R's, B's, S's, or T's. My name is Ronald Bruce Spate, which means I could not pronounce my name. So when I started school, I could not pronounce my name. So they placed me in a retarded class with people who were, at that time we used to call mongoloid, and we used to say the word retarded also. They were Down syndrome, and I wasn't. My dad was still, he hadn't been home from Korea that long, so he was still struggling with some things. But when he did find out about it, he got me out of there. He said, my son is not this, And he sat me down. He taught me the proper way to breathe and how to calm myself. So taught me the speech patterns I use to this day. So basically, only if I get really angry will I start to stutter. Or if I get stressed out, then I'll start to stutter. Then I'll lose that control I have. And he taught me how to read by getting a comic book. And he read the first comic book ever read to me, which was also the first comic book I read to my sister, was a Wendy, the Good Little Witch comic book. Because at that time, superheroes are too scary at that time. For a kid, in first grade. And then that was the only entertainment that I could control, because all I needed was a nickel and I could get a comic book. But that was a lot of money back then. But because, Dad controlled the TV. There was one. It was in the front room. He had it, But I could control that. And then when I got in the Army and I continued my love of these things, even though, I would write, I was a member of the Barry Marvel Marching Society, and I would write the DC Comics and ask them, the Legion of Superheroes, how come there are no black superheroes in this? At that time it was Negro. And they said, oh no, we don't need that because we have green people and blue people. I'm like, please.
Not the same. Not the same.
But, their problem is when they tried to rectify it, they went for pure stereotype. Okay. I remember the first black person leading superheroes. He had a big afro. His superpower had something to do with him singing. He wore a white costume with weird shoes. And I'm like, what? Now I'm a teenager now, so no thank you. And then the military, they became priority because only two things I read in the field. I read medical books to keep myself up, and I read comic books. Everybody else was bringing Playboy books out to the field. Why would I want to bring a Playboy book out to the field? Okay, I'm in a little tiny vehicle with another man. You know, it's 0+ degrees out there, or 120, like when I was in the Mojave Desert out there. Why would I want to do that? Okay, I couldn't understand it. So I enjoyed that. And then, before Army, Star Trek was a big part of my life, because Star Trek was the first time I'd ever seen black officers. There were more black officers on Star Trek than actually I'd seen my first 3 years of military service. They were a form of escapism that didn't make me high, didn't make me want to hurt anybody. Because when you really have PTSD, the real world sucks, because the real world, your perception of your world is always trying to hurt you. Okay, because you get intrusive thoughts. Okay, a lot of people get them from what they see. I don't get them from what I say. I get them from what I hear and what I smell. Because having worked with burnt children before, do you know that burnt pork smells like burnt human flesh? Oof. Well, it does. And when the summertime comes and somebody's barbecuing, I've got to get the Vicks vapor rub. And see, I started to study there because I got a little stressed, and put it in my nose. Like I said earlier, children's cries, children's voices translate to screams and cries. I had a dream of swimming in a sea of blood with little eyeballs in it. My then wife used to tell me that I run in my sleep, because I'm always running towards something. And then whatever I run towards is always bad. We once pulled somebody out of a fire. Once again, in a white uniform. And we got her out. Once again, had to pay for another uniform. But she had on plastic curlers, which had melted into her face. These are, or if you get called to a dependent housing area and there's a child choking, or you get called to a high-ranking person's housing area and there are signs of abuse of a child or something like that. And to see how things never really change much. When I'm an NCO, I'm at Fort Dix. The pay was so low at that time that we had to get food assistance from ACS and Red Cross. And today we are still giving food assistance to soldiers. I believe when I went, it was $200 and something a month as a married individual. And if you weren't at least an E4, you couldn't live on post. So that meant you had to, and, we tell people about the early 70s, they act like it's 1800 where you get a steak for a nickel, No, stuff still costs money back in the 70s, 60s, and 80s too.
People have a hard time comprehending the value of money and what 50 cents is the equivalent, 5 cents is the equivalent now to what it was 50, 60 years ago. Like, people, especially today's youth, they don't understand
what I could do with a nickel. Matter of fact, what I could do with $1, I could buy a pint of ice cream, a can of soda, and a handful of candy.
Wow.
Could have still only cost 17 cents.
See, the only thing I could buy with $1 back when I was a kid, and we're talking 80s, 90s, and when I lived in North Philly, we had the corner store that had penny candies. So I'd get 100 Tootsie Rolls for $1. That was the closest thing we had to.
At 23rd and Huntington, Mr. Carey's store was there. And he had all kinds. Well, we even had, back then we had more than 16 different types of Lifesaver.
Wow.
We had butter rum and all that. And now you get spearmint, peppermint. That's it.
So back to the comic books.
Yes.
how did that, how were you, you're 72 right now, and you still have this passion for comic books. And how has that transitioned over all these years? But comic books have seen many swells of, great times. Like right now, we're having like Absolute Batman in the Ultimate Universe, which is huge. Um, you know, how did you keep up with comic books, and how did that motivate you and inspire you to help you get through life?
Well, you have to remember the older heroes were based on purer thoughts. Okay, nowadays they're a little bit more rough. But you have to remember the most powerful individual in the world was Superman. And he was only nice because he wished to be. He was only moral because he wished to be. Nobody could stop him. Batman put his guns away because he used to have a gun. Batman put his guns away because he wished to do it, which meant that there was a good side to human beings. And that's also what motivated me in a lot of things, because that was always a good side to human beings, and to see people vulnerable, because I'm a baby boomer. My generation is not big on crying. Okay.
No.
And even less so my father's generation above that. So you've got to express your emotions in these things that weren't laughed at or frowned upon. You could explore worlds your imagination could open up. One of the happiest times of my life was when I actually saw a real life Superman uniform. Matter of fact, they were displaying it at a Comic-Con. I know his name's changed, but it's Comic-Con. I was in New York when I was living in New York at the Javits Center, and they had his original uniform there. I'd seen it on TV, but I'd never seen it, And the first time I ever saw a working Black Beauty, the Green Hornet's car.
Really nice. At the New York Comic Con.
No, this was in Philly.
Oh, in Philly. Okay.
I have pictures of me in the original Batmobile here in Philly, the original Green Hornets car here in Philly, and what's that other one? The car from Supernatural.
Oh, the Charger.
Yeah.
Challenger.
Me and my brother, and we got the trunk open and all the weapons are there. And they let us pull out the bone knife or whatever that was. And it's important that people understand that the happiest times of your life were the times you were a child. And the first thing we do when we go towards adult things, everything that you wanted to do as an adult is bad for you if you use it in excess. I'm 21 now. What you going to do? I'm going to drink. I'm going to drive too. I'm going to give me some drugs. I'm going to have lots of sex. I don't care about babies. I'm going to smoke me some cigarettes. Every one of those things I just named are fun at first, but every one of them will kill you eventually. Whereas, when the last time you sat down with your kids or just sat down by yourself and played Monopoly? See, sometimes you can't always play games with board games with other people, but you can always read a comic book. You can always revel in your good times,
It's a great way to get an escape. That's for sure.
Yeah. And realistically, it's really, even though from my personal knowledge, it's 1,000 times more expensive than it used to be, but it's 1,000 times less expensive than a pack of cigarettes, and it shares other people's cultures, even though some of them are they were a little bit racist sometimes, because if you remember Hal Jordan's Green Lantern and Pie Face, or if you remember the Blackhawks and Chop Chop, or if you remember Inky, then, but that also proves that they can grow. They can grow. And that's important because, to me, PTSD is a growth and a punishment. And sometimes I do feel like I'm being punished. But the thing is, I didn't do anything bad. With all the bad stuff I ever did in my life, I don't have nightmares about. I don't. First time I ever stabbed somebody, I don't have a nightmare about that. I just don't. It's like, yeah, well, He started. I stuck him. I'm gonna have lunch. But put me in a room full of children, and I'm 51 years back in the burn tents with these kids. You know, put me on a high place, and I'm back on that mountain again. You know,
so it just takes you right back to that moment instantly.
Yes. And sometimes I have to inflict more pain on myself to keep myself grounded. And being already in chronic pain, having constant pain, plus severe mobility issues. And I'm 220 pounds. I can't lift 7 pounds. I can't lift a walker that I'm sitting in up 2 steps. I used to teach self-defense at Pointville Recreation Center at Fort Dix. I was the first man, especially first black man, gotta say that's Black History Month, to have a martial arts tournament in Kitzingen, Germany on base. And when your past beats you, and that's what it does, it tires you out. It leads to depression. I have depression. I get anxiety. Like I can't feel trapped. I can't ever feel trapped. See, if I ride in somebody else's car, I feel trapped. I also feel like I'm going to an ambulance run. I've been on over 300 ambulance runs and some medevacs and some dust offs too. So I don't like to ride in other people's car.
So with what you've been through and the fact that you're a man and you're a boomer, when you reflect on what you used to be able to do compared to your status now and your physical capabilities, I don't think people understand what that makes a man feel like. When you go from, for instance, you go from benching 250 pounds to being only able to bench 50 pounds.
Well, I'll take it even further than that. When you go from being able to walk up a flight of stairs to have to take one step at a time and then sit down. When you can't move 6 feet without a cane. You can't move 40 feet without a walker. When you can't feel parts of your body because they're numb or they're constantly tingling. When you need special tools to help you open up things that you could open up when you were 5 years old. You need somebody to come into your house on a daily basis or other daily basis, like in my case, to help you get dressed or to help you feed yourself, or you need special things to do special things. When you can't throw a ball, but the 20-year-old me, the 50-year-old me, the 10-year-old me, even the 60-year-old me is still inside me. And I have enough body memory. If someone were to jump at me, I would try to jump up and my body would say, no, it's not going to happen.
Not today.
It destroys. I only speak for myself when I say this. It destroys who I am and who everything I wish to be. Because I know, and everybody talk about, well, you're getting older. And I say, I have an older brother and he can walk up a flight of stairs unassisted. And he can open a jar unassisted, and he can sleep more than 4 hours a night,
It's hard coming to that realization.
Yeah.
Although, and I'm only 48, but I do understand what you're saying in regards to my body's 48, but mentally, and I don't mean like intelligence level or anything. Yeah. I feel like I still do everything I could do at 25, and I physically can't. Yeah. And that takes a toll on a man. That really, it hurts.
Yes.
To come to that realization that
people don't understand.
I'm not the man I used to be. I'm 300 plus pounds and I can't bench 250 no more. And I know that's extreme, but that little thing.
But see, it's not extreme.
I can't walk up a flight of steps without losing my breath.
It's not extreme because that is your life cycle.
Yes.
Also, as a matter of pride, I don't want to be that guy. That guy, every time you go somewhere, We got to hold the door open for him. We got to do this for him. We got to do that for him. We got to do that. I don't want to be that guy.
I don't want pity.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody's pity.
I don't need anybody's pity. I would prefer to stay alone. They don't understand, because they always want to lessen the blow by saying, well, you're getting older. And I'm like, what does that got to do with me having the capability to open a soda or be able to, I can't even hold a plate of food. Okay. I just can't, I can only hold my hand out for like 5 or 6 minutes and then my arm will automatically drop. And this arm, that's as far as I can extend it.
What made you join the military? What was it that was like, I understand your father and your uncle, but what said, hey, Doc, or Ronald at the time, why should I join the military? Like, what made you want to join the military?
I did not wish to be drafted because those people who were drafted did not get a choice. I was smarter than that. I was not going to let them. You have to remember, I was like, when Vietnam started, I was 10. Vietnam, I remember that I was there and I was 21. So I had seen the older guys in the neighborhood come back after 2 years and they weren't the same. They just weren't. And I listened to them because, they'll be over there talking. I'm listening because nobody pays attention to me. I'm a kid. And a lot of them aren't here anymore. And when I was listening to them, I'm like, no, because they got drafted. And they sent a lot of them right into the mouth of hell. And I decided I'm going to go, and I'm going to do what I wish to do. And not to mention at that time, I was also on a redemption thing because, I did some bad stuff doing the gang thing for 2 years. So I was on a redemption thing and I said, I'm not going to hurt anybody anymore. I have no desire to harm anybody anymore because been there, did that, got the cookie, moving on.
What's the difference between someone getting drafted at that time and someone enlisting themselves?
Well, when you enlist, you can go in delayed entry program. You could choose your MOS more. If you qualify, you choose your MOS. I was a bright kid. I went to Dobbins. So I chose to be medical. I was going to go medical. I was going to go into the clergy as a chaplain's assistant, but I chose medical, and I learned an awful lot, and I've done an awful lot during my time there because I wanted to help. Okay, and I mean this is no slight to anybody who was in combat or anything like that, but the reality of it is, that's all it takes to kill. That's it. That's it. Put your hands in somebody who's bleeding. Resuscitate somebody. Do mouth to mouth on somebody. And after about 3 minutes, you'll think you're dying.
You mentioned working with kids in Vietnam.
At the refugee camps.
At the refugee camps. What was the most lasting memorable impression that left for you?
Rather than, I'll actually read you the experience. We had a 9-year-old Vietnamese boy die of fever. The eyes of the children burned into my memory and my very soul. Children are not supposed to suffer and die. It is not supposed to be like that. That incident reminded me of the boy that died while I was working on him. That boy was supposed to vomit a little and maybe have some cramping like all the others until all the parasites were expelled. It could have been an allergic reaction. He could have had other problems. All I know is that I felt guilty because he trusted me to save him, and I did not. I have dreams about maggots in my mouth repeatedly over the years, and I've been so afraid to deal with sick children that I cannot stand to be around my own children and have abandoned every one of them at some time in my life. The children's screams would send me flashing back to the refugee camps. I was also so scared that I contracted some kind of disease or parasite that to this day I check myself every day for spots, lumps, bumps, blemishes. I became hyper aware of every day and everything, and my obsession with being the best medic and my attention to detail were almost perfect. I was driven to a point that I watched and learned how to do things above my MOS qualifications. Since that time, I've not had a restful night's sleep without being exhausted. The things that made me happy held little to no meaning to me anymore, and I became very regimented in my life and my way of thinking. I did not stay at the camps long enough to remember anything of great importance, but I stayed at the camps long enough to learn horror and place 60 humans in body bags. We brought refugees with us, and we unloaded the planes and ships. The Vietnamese were packed so tight on the USS Midway, they were pissing on themselves as they were standing there. And even in that book, I actually described the child and how the child died looking into my eyes. And the fact that it was there with other children, the fact that when we did debride them, and debriding is those kids that were burnt by flamethrowers and things, we would take, there'd be no pain medication. They would take a sterile water basin, surgical scrub brush, hold them down, debride them, put some Silvadene on it, put a dressing on it. We had never done that to American children. Never. The evacuees, the refugees, they never returned home. They woke up the next morning at the camp with no job, no money, no religion, don't know where your family is, don't know what this food these people are feeding you is, don't understand this language these people are speaking. They lost everything. No American has ever lost everything, because if you lose your house, you lose your money, you are still on American soil. They were not on Vietnamese. They were not in Vietnam. And we also had Laotians there. We had Cambodians there who had lost the same things. And when you deal with people with that much loss, plus the fact that if all of them didn't have some form of PTSD, I don't know what it is, because these people grew up in war. Plus, I got to see the first effects of Agent Orange on children. Same Agent Orange they were saying, oh, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. But I got to see that on children. Children who had spina bifida, children who had cleft palates, children who were still dying of measles, children who had never been inoculated, like I was, children with rickets, children who were dying of polio, children with bullets in them.
That is, I don't think anyone, I know for a fact, unless you were there, there's no way anyone could ever relate to having that much trauma in their life, in your brain, in your memory. How soon after returning from doing the evacuations did you realize that you had PTSD? Like, what gave you, how did you know?
Oh, I couldn't turn it off. So yeah, like I said, I worked before then. I worked in ICU. I've seen all the good stuff comes out of ICU. I've been an ambulance person. I've seen all the good stuff comes out of ambulance. So I wasn't a rookie, I was like cherry boy, anything like that. So when I got back home and it popped in my head, and then I heard a baby cry and it popped in my head and it just kept popping in my head. And I just couldn't sleep. And then I just wanted to be left alone, and that's, shortly after that is when we, we did our suicide attempt. But luckily I was resuscitated. But by then I knew. And at that time, it was not considered PTSD.
Right. You mentioned that it was, and I was going to ask you next, because you mentioned you saw your dad deal with a form of what was PTSD, but was called shell shock.
Yeah.
So
So basically, we were being denied treatment because they said if you were not in combat, you cannot have PTSD. Well, sorry, correction. You cannot have shell shock if you're not in combat. But see, back then, at that time, there was no such thing as PTSD. PTSD is open now for all types of trauma. But at that time, it was only classified as combat fatigue or shell shock. And if you were not in direct combat or then you couldn't have it. I don't care if you lost both your arms, you couldn't have it. You just couldn't. So we had to, many of us suffered in silence. Most of us got the heck out. You know. By the way, the medal that they gave us took them almost a year to create. And we thought it was going to be like the Humane Service Medal, which they gave for the Berlin airlift. Just for that. And we thought it was going to be ours. We were going to be special. But as of right now, over 300 different actions have it. So if I see somebody wearing it, I don't know if he was, only way I can know if he was with me is how old he is. Not to mention, people don't understand about the evacuation, the fall of Southeast Asia. Operation Eagle Pull was the evacuation of Laos. Operation Baby Lift went deep into a war-torn country fighting each other. They were civilian-inspired, military augmented. They switched to they only got out orphans, mostly from camps where a lot of American kids were. Operation New Life accepted adults and children. Operation Eagle Pull is what they call the fall of Saigon. That was 1 or 2 days. And that was over. Baby Lift was over in about 2 weeks, and so was Eagle Pull about 2 weeks. When we were over, we took them to refugee camps and stayed in different countries' jungles in refugee camps. We had the first of the 25th Infantry Division. Charlie Wolfhounds, I think they were called. I may be wrong. They were there to help protect us at the camps. So the camps were in the jungles of the Philippines, camps were in the jungles of Guam, the camps were on Wake Island. These were not fun places. These were not, and the unit I was with, because I didn't go with my unit. I was picked to go with another unit. And then other units formed together to form the 1st Medical Group. So I didn't know half the people. I'd never seen half the people that I was working with. Some of us went from the 440th Medical Detachment Field Ambulance, and we accompanied the 702nd Medical Clearing Company. To this day, I don't know what a medical clearing company is. I guess it's sort of like a hospital. I was a ramp tramp, so they sent me anywhere they needed me to do anything they wanted me to do on the medical side of the house, along with others. So when all the other evacuations were home, we were still there. And then followed us came another operation that followed us, and they made a movie about them with Patrick Swayze and Forrest Whitaker called The Green Dragon. Operation New Arrivals, that's what it's called. And they were at some Marine Corps base, and they had some trauma and all this. But the thing is, they were at a Marine Corps base, and they were worried about stuff. They made that movie and took out Baby Lift. They took out New Life. They took out Frequent Wind. They took out Eagle Pull. They acted like we didn't exist. It was like, this is Vietnam. And now everybody's in America and everybody's happy. It didn't go like that. They suffered. They suffered horribly. Can you imagine what, like, wondering where your mom is, where your dad is, where your children are? And it was so bad at the camp, because we did our best, but it was bad at the camp, so bad that 1,500 of them wanted to go back to Vietnam. So we sent them back. Now, I don't know what happened to that ship, but I do know that they had 2 ways of dealing with them. They were either killing them or sending them to re-education camps. So a few years ago, the Vietnamese community, which by the way, our Vietnam Veterans Memorial down there also they have their section there too. And I was honored to go down there and present them with something thanking those who had been through the camps for their strength, their fortitude, and for being in a foreign land and trying to be the best Americans that they could possibly be. Because they, if anybody has a reason to be mad, they did. Okay. There wasn't some mayor dropped a bomb on your house and you got to move off. You got to move off Osage Avenue. Okay. This is nothing here is yours. The air doesn't smell the same. The sky doesn't look the same. Nothing here is yours. And when they ate our food, and see, the richer people got taken out at the fall. We had people coming to us in boats, little tiny boats. Would take them 2 to 3 days. Some of these people had drank seawater. They were trying to get out, and they were trying to get out there to rescue some of these people. Some of the boats went down and people drowned on them. I think I actually have a picture of that, which I only looked at once, and I'm not going to look at it again. But there were so things that Americans had never seen before. And something else. We had fought wars before, but we had never evacuated anyone before. Anyone. No one. We never evacuated anyone before. The Germans stayed in Germany after World War II. Koreans stayed in Korea after Korea. And by the way, the Korean War is still on. We just have a truce. If they want to shoot you over there, they still can. And people are still ignoring those veterans who are there. You know, if you serve in Korea, you still get a chance to be popped. Any questions? Sorry.
That was very emotional, and I thank you for sharing that with us. I know it's hard. I see the look on your face when you're discussing it, and I can see your head and your brain going back there. How do we, besides Veteran Day and Memorial Day, how do we celebrate veterans in America, and how do we continue that going forward?
Well, first thing is to learn the truth about what veterans do and have done. But the most important thing to me is learn the proper greeting and when to properly greet someone. There are 3 holidays for people like myself. Armed Forces Day. That is for anyone who is actively in uniform. That is not my day. So leave me out of it. Veterans Day. That is my day. Rejoice with me. Memorize with me. Thank me for my service. But ask me what I did, and I'll tell you. If a veteran doesn't want to tell you, he won't. But I'll tell you what I did. I don't have a problem with that. But the most important is Memorial Day. Do not say Happy Memorial Day to me. That is when we grieve those who are lost. That's like saying, hey, have a good day at the funeral. Don't say Happy Memorial Day. That is wrong on so many levels you cannot imagine it. Now, if someone says, Happy Armed Forces Day. Thank you. Thank you. Also, don't ever let anybody tell you that they fought for your freedom. People fight to survive. Okay? People fight to survive. I'm going to get a lot of backlash from that, but they fight to survive. Because I had some child, and he was all of 35, telling me he fought for my freedom. And I explained to him, if you did a really poor job. Because I still can't live anywhere I wish to live. Did they fight for the country? Darn right. Did they fight for patriotism? Darn right. Were they heroic? Darn right. But let's not elevate anybody above their station. Because see, as a medic, if you have a bullet in you from combat, or you got cut up because you were downtown messing with somebody's girlfriend, all I see is a injured soldier, and I will treat you both the same. Medals do not bring you honor. Medals do not make you brave. Courage is something that can't be quantified. If this man runs to that building and saves that child, he's courageous or he's stupid. If he goes in there and he cannot save that child, now there are two people I have to get out of there. My father was a decorated individual. I have a few medals myself. I'm honored to be in a family where there are Purple Hearts. I'm honored to be in a family that has all types of decorations. I'm honored to have friends who have Purple Hearts. But the majority of people I know that have it would gladly give that medal back in order to have that body part that they lost back. If I could give my medal back and be able to stand up straight and walk, or they could take all the stuff that they give me, well, which they promised, I didn't ask for it. If they could just let me have 8 hours of sleep for 1 week, I would gladly give it all back. A lot of people think that everybody that we're lazy or something like that. There may be 1% of us who were faking it. We had gold bricks in the army, always lying about how they feel. But you have to have integrity. Integrity not to follow the legal order. You have to have integrity. Integrity to know what's right and what's not. What's right and what's right now aren't the same thing. Okay. I could have harmed people who treated me badly or were racist to me in the military. You're mad at me on my ward. You do know I change your IV. You do know I see you when you're sleeping. You do know the bedpans are made of metal and they're very cold sometimes, But I chose not to do that because as a soldier, as a sailor, as an airman, as a coastie, as a Marine, you have to have some form of integrity. And integrity does not mean the ability to beat somebody up or yell somebody down. I have earned the right under the Constitution, which I swore an oath to. I earned the right to salute that flag in civilian clothes and to kneel in front of it and protest. No one has earned the right to touch me if I do that. No one. Because if I do it, I'm doing it because I have the integrity to know why I'm kneeling in front of the flag, because I'm protesting something that is true. I'm not protesting higher gas prices. And sometimes the military can be robots. And you don't want them to be robots. I wanted all the people that served under me and those that I served under to be free thinking. I need ideas. Courage comes from ideas. Okay? You can get 27 people to run up that hill, but then only one comes back. And the one that comes back is the one that says, well, next time, why don't we just put an artillery shell on the hill? And they'll go, yeah, good idea. The other 26 wish you said that beforehand. I'm sorry, I go all sometime on tangents. I'm sorry.
All right, Doc. So, if you had to go back and give little Doc or little Ronnie some advice about the future and what would you do different?
Well, first I would change my military occupational specialty and instead of going into the medical corps, I would go into become a chaplain's assistant. Because I'm an ordained minister now. So that would have helped me along my journey, and it would have helped me heal people spiritually. Whereas in the medical corps, I wanted to heal people physically because I had harmed people physically. So I was trying to go tit for tat. But since faith will always outlast strength, I should have went with faith.
What would you tell yourself, your younger self, about strength and about being strong?
Do not never judge anybody by their physical strength or by their outward appearance, which for the most part I never did, because I was a small light-skinned kid, so everybody's picking on me. But you don't become strong until you become responsible, because only a real man will ever accept everything and take responsibility for everything that he does and allow nothing to stop him. If you don't want me to eat at your restaurant, I'll find another place to eat. If you don't want me to live in your neighborhood, I'll find a better place to live. If you don't want to be my friend, I got a comic book. Yeah. So it's what's inside you that makes you strong. Biology made you a man, but what's inside you makes you strong. And you have to grow that seed of strength. And only you can do that. And that takes integrity. That takes honesty. That takes knowing when you can't do something. Okay. And my generation, we're notorious for, wife reaches over and says, "Are you lost?" No, I can find it. We're lost. We're just lost. And if I could have admitted some of those things instead of trying to be the man, life may have been easier. And I would tell them, don't go for that. Just don't go for that. Because if you think that being a man is anything to do with physical power, then you're wrong. Because you're not the tallest, you're not the strongest, never have been, never will be. I know people say, well, he's weak because he's gay. And I'm like, he's not weak. He can knock you out. You just don't assume that about somebody because of their sexuality or because they're a woman, Because in the military, I served with some outstanding women. And one or two of them scared the holy heck out of me, let me tell you. I knew one that could kick my behind. But let alone my mom could too. So actually, my mom could kick my behind when I got 14 years old. Once I was 14, Mom was this big. So, love her to death though. Which is funny because when you tell somebody you're from North Philly, they automatically see drugs and ghettos and all this. I grew up from around Connie Mack Stadium, right across the street from Shive Park. All the industry was there. I grew up next to, there were white people in my neighborhood. There were white people in my high school. You want to see the Phillies, you came to North Philly, If you wanted to do any type of industry, you were on Spring Garden. My street still has trees on it to this day. We had movie theaters within walking distance. Don't anymore. We had gas stations that weren't adjacent to major highways like Lehigh Avenue, I remember when Sinclair Gas was right there at 22nd and Diamond.
What's the biggest changes you've seen from past generations to this generation?
The massive amount of disrespect that younger people give to older people because they believe that because they're more physically powerful than them, that we can't do anything about it. And, to all the young people out there, we didn't get this old by not knowing how to get you back. I make a joke to my younger nieces and nephews, and I say, if you ever, my younger sister's children, if you ever do something bad to your parents, anything like that, thump, thump. And they say, Uncle Ronald, what's thump, thump? Thump, thump, and my front tire's running over you and my back tire's running over you. You will be bigger than me, stronger than me, smarter than me. But you'll never be as old as me. When you're old as me, I'm already gone.
Yeah.
there's a massive amount of disrespect. People do not have common courtesy. It's simple common courtesy. There are people out there who are 80 and 90 years old who I could push down, beat up, rob, take their money. And I still say ma'am and sir, because they're older than me. And the fact that they lived through these things, they deserve it. Not everybody deserves respect, though. It's because they're old, because some people are old by being evil.
Yeah.
But I remember I was 50 years old, father, done with the military, own my own home, went to see my dad. My dad said, boy, go to the store and get me a soda. Now I'm here with my kids in front of my wife. So I stand up out that chair. I look my father square in his eyes and I say, what type of soda you want, Dad? And that's a true story. That's real.
Oh, I know. I know. Because you would have caught hands very quickly.
My father only hit me one time my entire life. And that's because I said at the dinner table, tomato soup looks like blood. And Dad went off on that. But that's the only time my father ever hit me. Whereas my aunts and uncles switched the heck out of me. But yeah. That's the only time my dad ever hit me. Because Dad was strength. He was like 6 feet tall. He was just strength. When Dad would walk in the house, everything would just, if the house was on fire, the fire would leave. Okay. Dad wasn't spooky. Dad was determined. When Dad walked down the street, the young boys moved out his way. And those were the guys with processed hair back then.
Yes.
And they would move out his way. They used to call him Big Sam, And I was 10 years old before I knew what my dad's first name was, because he was always Dad. Mm-hmm. And I was 20 before I was allowed to say Pop. I love my father with passion. I miss him so much, and I miss my mother so much. They were my safe spaces. It was my dad that got me to go back to the military, because after I made the suicide attempt, I wasn't coming back. I was done. I was leaving. I was on my way to Canada and Mexico. I was leaving. I don't care if they came from me. I just didn't care. I talked to my dad, and my dad said, don't let them break you. And instead of staying on leave forever, when my leave ended, I went back, started the whole cycle again, had 3 incidents in 3 different countries, which gave me PTSD. But it was worth it to an extent. But the only part I truly regret is the loneliness. Because it's not fair to make a wife and children become your caregiver when they had nothing to do with it. Now, you marry your wife till death do us part, through sickness and in health. If you two are together and you get sick, yes, she should stay with you. She gets sick, yes, you should stay with her. But I'm coming into situations with this problem already in place. So I'm handing you a whole set of problems with no solutions. And that's a hell of a stress. And for the women that were in my life and for my children, I sincerely, honestly, and truly apologize. But the person that you knew is not the person I ever was. The PTSD issues since the age of 21 have changed me into who I am now, or what you knew of me. And I never was cruel to them. I never put my hands on them. It wasn't them. It never was anything that they did. It was what's inside of me, and the fact that it hurt me so much with some of the thoughts I was having. Have you ever thought about harming your own children? Not spanking that butt or warming that hiney or getting a switch. But if sometimes the presence of children makes you just want to think about picking up a hammer and just stopping that noise, leave, get out of there. And that was the reason I did leave. They didn't do anything. They were just being themselves. It was in my head. The problems were in my head. And I know that at one time, if I tried to take myself out, then I know I probably could do them too. And rather than do that, I leave. I leave. I'm not looking for a pity party or anything like that. But it is hard to be alone. It is hard to have somebody that loves you, and you're not really, you care for them, but you don't feel the love. And since I have memories prior to that, and I had love prior to that, I know what love is. But I am emotionally numb on so many things. And when I do have anger issues, they're explosive. So over the years, I've developed tools to manage these things. If I feel strongly about anything, whether it's good or bad, I leave. If I'm too happy about something or I'm too mad about something, I just leave. And I have to get to my safe space. Now, a safe space to me is, one, is my bedroom. Because one, I can defend it. And two, there are people who are my safe space too. One of my therapists is my safe space. I have a doctor who's my safe space. My older brother, my two younger sisters, they're my safe spaces. There are people I can go to and know that they will not judge me. They will not harm me. Because in America, even to this day, mental illness is a crime. Anytime you say someone mentally ill, you think that, and if you notice everything that happens in bad in school, the first word they say, oh, they're just shopping over school. He's mentally ill. He's not mentally ill. He's evil. Okay? I'm in my 70s and I've never done that type of evil. I'm mentally ill, which means I'm troubled. Like there are millions of us out there who are troubled. We are not weak. We are troubled. We are not evil. But the stigma about it, you tell somebody, oh, I have mental illness. First thing you want to do is they think you're a drug addict or you're an alcoholic or you're going to molest their children, or you're going to be homeless someday, or you can't work, or you did this to yourself. And that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. We have too much of a stigma with mental illness in this country.
I would like to bring up something that we talked about personally. Just because I feel like it's relevant and I feel like it's something people don't talk about. Many people talk about attempting suicide. You were successful at it.
Yes. Although I won't mention the way I did it because I don't want to give anybody out there ideas because it's not right.
Right.
I was successful at it.
How does that?
Well, semi-successful because I'm here.
Right. Exactly. You were brought back. What would you say to anyone out there considering that's the only option? Because I often say that is a long-term solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, first of all, go outside of yourself. Take a few moments, the same amount of time you're thinking, whatever plan you're thinking, go outside of yourself and look at the people around you and look for your future. Do you have children? How will this traumatize your children? Are your parents alive? How will this destroy their lives? What about, and even something as petty as, what about your stuff? You got anything in there that you treasure in that house? Once you're gone, anybody will take it. Look for a reason to stay. Any reason to stay. Because there are no bad ones. There are no trivial reasons. Look for a reason to stay. I didn't look for a reason to stay. In reality, if I would have succeeded, I would have destroyed all my aunts, all my uncles, my dad, my mom, my brothers, my sisters. No children would be born. Well, one would, but the others would not be born or adopted. Those lives that I saved would not have been saved later on in those later years. At least not the way I did it. The world would have been an emptier place without me. Just like it would have been an emptier place without you. Because I know you've harbored those thoughts before too. And I extend this to you from one brother to another brother. If you ever get those thoughts again, talk to me, call me. We'll talk it out. We'll get you any type of help you want. Because there are going to be good times, there are going to be bad times, there are going to be up times, there are going to be down times. But at least there are times. And nothing is as important as you being here now. Because you cannot affect change if you are not here.
That is 1,000% correct.
Yeah. And it took me 51 years to realize that.
No. Wow. What a conversation. Yes, I am crying.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I want to thank you sincerely, truthfully. This conversation was needed. It was so needed for so many people out there. I didn't know how much I needed this conversation sitting here talking to you. So thank you.
I do appreciate you letting me do this because nobody listens to old people anymore. They just want us to give them money and spout off stuff. That's about it. And it is important. And once again, it's also part of my therapy. So,
and I'm glad I have something to do with that in a positive way.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've already run over all of the people who in a negative way have affected me. So.
There's been plenty of thumps.
Yeah. You had changed cars. Let me tell you, they got all up in the axle and everything.
Once again, thank you so very much.
My honor, my pleasure.
Everyone out there listening, if you are having these thoughts, if this is something that has crossed your mind, please reach out. There's hotlines, there's people. You are loved, you are wanted, you are appreciated way more than you will ever know. Believe me, seek help. Until next time, keep the street lights on. We'll see you next time.